We're going to go on in about 1 minute. I think my timer's wrong. So don't worry. We'll get there. Once we get my Instagram up, I'll get fired up. I think I have sound. I hope I have sound. So we'll get fired up. You're not going to give me full screen. There you go. All right. All right. I don't know if you heard my little bang, 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 but this is Nightcap. Tonight, we're going to talk about the big controversial story that has been going around Lancaster, went viral, went worldwide. The Lancaster Pride story hour that was canceled. The reason I'm talking about this, it's old news, but it's still important news. And the reason I'm bringing it up is because there's been a new development, and I'm going to articulate my perspective and maybe try to wrap in some other perspectives. But there was a demand for an apology. And my conversation today with myself and you is going to be about whether or not that was appropriate. What does it mean? And maybe I'll give you a little bit of history lesson on some other things. I did a little research and kind of dove in a little bit. So I'm going to lay it on you. But before I get into the story, I'm going to talk briefly. In fact, I just hit record. All right. Listen, this is the podcast. This is the podcast version. I am recording my first podcast today. So I'm going to actually simultaneously do this live, and we're going to record the audio, which I just hit record on, so that we can roll this into a podcast. So I'm going to do a little preamble before I get into kind of my main topic. And I want to provide a little history for those folks listening for the first time, wondering what this is about and why is this guy so angry. I started this podcast during the Trump kind of years, but Smashing the Party was a concept that I registered years ago in 2009. I was actually frustrated with the Democratic Party. And so I registered the domain, which has been hijacked from me, which I will eventually get back once I achieve world domination. But when I registered that domain, my idea was that I would have a platform where I could just scream and yell about both parties, because I hated the tribalism. I hated the kind of entitlement that candidates felt, and even people inside the party, kind of how the people moved about. And so I was kind of angry and bitter, like I am a lot of the times, unfortunately. By the way, I'm happy. I'm just, when I try to emote about things that are frustrating, then you can see the bitterness that's kind of pushed way down deep inside. But when I started this just random concept, I didn't even have a website or anything like that. I just registered because I wanted to have some mechanism to speak out against the tribalism in my own party that I was a member of. I had just converted from a Republican to a Democrat. And so I was still disillusioned with the parties in general. And I was kind of riding the Obama hope train, which was fantastic. Got me involved. Kudos to Obama. But I was, I kind of started to move around the local politics because I was kind of doing things in the Obama campaign locally, got some name recognition, was kind of recruited into the Democratic Party. I would like to think if somebody's watching this, you're saying, we never recruited you. Well, it felt like recruitment, okay? And then eventually I ended up working for a state congressman and yada, 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 and learned a lot of shit. And 2 years later, I'm out going, finishing my degree. But, it was my foray into politics. And that nothing happened with Smashing the Party. Fast forward to Trump years, we're locked down, and I'm basically at my wit's end. So I roll out Smashing the Party, kind of roll out the branding. My neighbor helps me with some dope ass fucking icons and shit like that. Everything you're looking at, besides the animation and the cool stuff that I did, everything was designed by my neighbor, which is awesome. He did a great job. And eventually he's going to be coming to me for payment if this thing takes off. So, Ned, I got you. I didn't forgot. All right. But so that's kind of just for those folks just listening. This was a live stream that kind of rolled into just this continuous weekly, daily, actually Monday through Thursday. I was doing it every night at 10:30 for about, 2 years or something like that, and had a reach of 120,000, had some subscribers. And then it kind of trailed off, went into some personal problems, which I'll get into, and maybe I'll talk about that in a future podcast. But it just kind of broke me down, and I wasn't able to do it anymore. I just literally couldn't even get behind the mic for a while until recently, and I popped this back in and pressed play, and here we are. So that's kind of the preamble. There's a lot more to it, but I'll give you a little bio for me. You know, if you're listening, you can't see, I'm half black, half white, adopted into a huge family, 6 brothers, 6 sisters, very conservative area that I grew up in. And, you know, I'm an outlier in the area I grew up in, but there's a pretty progressive movement in this area now. But I was kind of engulfed in conservatism most of my life. Nothing wrong with it. I'm not hating on how I was brought up. I was obviously, you can see that I turned out fabulous and fantastic. They did a fantastic job raising this little motherfucker. So the last thing before I go too far, the language is going to be adult language. So you don't probably want to listen to this with your little protected kids' ears. Although I encourage you to put it in front of them because they're going to hear it anyway. So why not just let their first kind of intro into the beauty of vulgarity be smashing the party? Why not? Let them know. Maybe their first words could be nightcap instead of daddy or mommy. I don't know. I'm pro putting this in front of anybody that wants to listen. And if you want to use it to indoctrinate your kids, so be it. Jokes aside, that's kind of just a little preamble of what's going on. You can certainly catch me on all the platforms. And when you start looking for me, you're not going to find that there's some $1 million following. Although when I was in my heyday, I had about 120,000 reach, which I continue to brag about because I think it was kind of impressive considering, you know, I didn't know what I was doing. I still don't know what I'm doing. But anyway, so that's just a little background. You can find me on YouTube if you want to learn more. But I want to get into the topic of today because this is my first podcast. So I'm not sure how this is going to go. And I want to get to the point. So we'll see how many edits I have to do in post. But the preamble and the lead to this podcast really comes from the story that happened in Lancaster. Drag queens wanted to read stories to children in the library. It was a public event, and there was a ton of backlash. And what happened is the public officials locally began speaking about it and their opinion. And then what ended up happening is the day of the event, there was bomb threats and they had to cancel the event. So it was a big letdown. Of course, there was a lot of political turmoil from it, or kind of back and forth. And it was a big story. And I do have opinions on it. I'll share. I'm just going to kind of do the news version of this, if you will. And then I'll provide my my rage induced commentary. Excuse me. I got it. That'll be cut and edit. That's what happens when you drink a big gulp of water right before you get on. So that's kind of the backdrop for this. And what then is going on now is, after all of that, of course, you have all the security, all the kind of public utilities and officials that have to get involved when there's a bomb scare. So now the kind of story blows up and it becomes national news because of the bomb scare. And of course, anytime there's a bomb scare that's used to influence or dissuade public from aggregating. I'm a computer scientist, by the way, so I use words like that. Aggregation, the aggregation of people in one location. Anytime you have that and you have somebody that throws a disruptor at it, especially for political purpose, you could argue that there's some terrorism there, right? So I mean, let's just say it. This was a terrorist threat that happened in Lancaster, and it shut down a public event. And whether or not you agree with it, that's kind of the crux of it. This is America. You're supposed to do things. And of course, it's story hour, and you're going to want to try to talk about how this sexuality, and we'll get into that, I guess. But to me, that's the stupid part. Like, that's the real stupid part. But I want to focus on the apology, because when I was looking for ideas today, one of my astute readers was like, hey, why don't you talk about the apology? And they were actually fired up about it. They're like, I don't think it's warranted. And it really fired me up. And I just don't think that the public official should be responsible for a bomb threat. And so, you know, when I got this message, I was like, all right, that's a good topic. And I definitely have opinions on it. So I began to do what I do for these lives, and I did a little research. And when I say a little research, I'm not going to argue that I'm some fucking expert, but I do some due diligence before I get on to make sure I'm not saying dumb shit. Okay. I hold Joe Rogan in high esteem for what he's accomplished. I don't hold him in high esteem for some of the things that he's put out there. Again, though, mad respect for what he's accomplished. I'm not going to go out there and hate the people at the top of this business when I'm trying to crawl up, but I would have done things differently. I would do things differently with Joe. And that's why I try to do my due diligence before I get on here and say, now, sometimes I'm going to say dumb shit. Okay. And that's part of the excitement for you is you get to capture me live saying dumb shit. But I do try to back this dumb shit up with some knowledge and maybe some articles and some newspaper articles, white papers, whatever. I'll dive into anything to try to break down the arguments that I think they're going to come against it and the arguments that are going to go for it. So I do that. What comes to mind for me when it comes to public speech is what Germany had to do after World War II. Now, I'm not making a leap to suggest anyone involved in this has any Nazi affiliation. That's nothing to do with the Nazis, okay? But post World War II, Germany, along with the help of the Allies, instituted this kind of new, basically a framework where they made it illegal to talk about Nazis or even publish Mein Kampf. Anything to do with Hitler propaganda was outlawed, and they did it through several mechanisms. There was judicial oversight. There was also the social consensus of shame that a lot of Germans felt from knowing that this was kind of pegged on their history. But also, there's laws that they passed that say you can only use this topic in ways that are educational, but you can't use these symbols or any of these iconography. Is that the word? Dude, by the way, I stumble on the words that I don't know, so that will probably be cut post as well. But because it makes me sound stupid, and I can read, but maybe there's some aphasia, some kind of shit in my head. Anyway, so through these different mechanisms, Germany was able to kind of do something which is like say, look, we're free speech, but this is not acceptable, and so people kind of look to that as an example of a country that's done horrible things and then kind of reshaped itself and then kept itself clean. Now, that doesn't mean to say that Germany doesn't have alt-right and folks that maybe align with that perspective. But you're in deep shit if you're trying to go out there and say it right. Now, it doesn't stop people from kind of pushing their agenda. And that's the whole point of free speech. You should be able to. However, I find it interesting that Germany and the Allies decided to do this, and its effect actually did create a social consensus against this alt-right Nazi bullshit for years. And so, and I am not an expert in Germany's in European history or what the current state of affairs in Germany is now, but this I found interesting and relatable to this kind of incident where there's a conflict for what public officials are saying, and then I'm kind of thinking in my mind, all right, well, then if there's some responsibility for those public officials, I need to find an example where we have some mechanism that controls the hate part of it. And Germany is just a great example of that. So since they had this, atrocity they've committed against the Jewish people, and then having to come out of that, I mean, that's, public, basically humiliation for Germany, shame, the crimes against humanity they committed. They had to kind of revamp their for lack of a better term, image. Obviously, they were split still. We had Eastern Germany and West Germany. But the goal was to create this safe place where they would no longer have to worry about this kind of ideology rising up and taking over and then doing the shameful thing. So I felt that was kind of an example where you have something some kind of framework where it restricts the certain type of hate that can instigate terrorist attacks, and it provides a framework where it's still you're still able to have free speech. Now, it's a leap, okay? Again, I am not a professional journalist. I'm a software architect. I write things, but I do like to solve problems and spin them around and try to think about, as I said before, I kind of have that hacker mentality when it comes to any problem. It's like, all right, how's it work? What's wrong with it? Where are the broken parts? And what do we want to do? What are our requirements? And what do we need to carve out of this? And can we reuse it, or do we have to throw it away? All these kind of questions that engineers and software people like to think about when they're writing software. And truth be told, I worked hard to become an engineer. And now most of the way I think is kind of this way of, I found it very, my own framework for how I analyze things. So I'm trying to figure this out. And I'm saying, all right, well, do I agree? Again, the comment or the point was that there was this event happened, and the folks that ran the event asked for a public apology from the two commissioners that were speaking out on this. And they had voiced their opinion that they didn't agree with it. Okay. And so then what they're saying is by kind of reverberating that perspective, and oftentimes in a way that basically says it's evil or something, or it's not appropriate, basically from a gatekeeping mentality on what's right or wrong. When a public official does that, it carries different weight than if you or I are on the street talking about it. When someone's in charge, and so when the commissioners put their opinion out into ether, one would argue that they've basically put their political stance out there and they're inciting something. Okay. Now, I actually agree that I'm not sure an apology is necessary, but that doesn't absolve them of the responsibility. For instance, they are not responsible for the bomb threat, but they are responsible for the rhetoric that could potentially lead to it. And this is why I say, why not, as county commissioners, say, when asked, hey, how do you feel about this event? This is the perfect response if you're county commissioner. Well, like any other event, we hope that the folks are able to meet safely, and that there's no kind of issues that happen. And we strongly encourage free speech in our county. While some may not agree, this is an event that will be held at the public library, and all are welcome, and and folks that aren't interested don't have to come. And that's our position, period. You don't have to say what you agree. I mean, you're there to facilitate the public. You're a servant. You're not there to go and kind of point at demographic and say what you approve of. So in this regard, fuck both of you motherfuckers. You have no right to suggest that this is wrong, or that you're in my opinion, and this is where the astute reader would disagree with me. Some people argue that public officials should be able to have these political stances. That's fine. But when you're a public official and somebody asks you a question like that, you go neutral. You go neutral. You don't have to inject yourself, because there's no point. You have no responsibility, and your responsibility is really to serve. And so by saying anything, by uplifting your position, whether it's pro or against, and I'm going to argue that if the public official said, you know what, this is great, we need more of this, and all the controversy that's happening across the nation with Story Hour, I think it's bullshit. Let's do it. We should have more of this. I would also argue that that's the wrong approach from a public official. So I'm saying that a public official should say, look, is it safe? Do we have all the cops in place? Do we have this? Are people do we have parking? All the logistics and everything else, and the proper disclosure of the event to the public, and then your job's done. We need nothing else. I don't care. You are not going to gatekeep what the fuck I do in my life. If there's a drag queen story hour and I want to send my kids there, I'll fucking send my kids there. And I'd like to know that your only concern is that they get there safely and that people aggregate safely. That's my position. So, but I go further to say, I'm not saying that for them to apologize, I think that's too much. And not too much, but I don't know if if they don't apologize, I'm like, okay, they've already, in my mind, failed their positions. Okay. And I don't expect them to apologize for the bomb threat. What may be appropriate is to say, this is something we probably shouldn't have injected ourselves into. As public officials, our concern is for public safety. and making sure that public services are distributed and everyone can do what they want. This is a free country, and that's it. Where we overstepped ourselves was by injecting our personal beliefs in a public event that really there's no coercion that people have to go to this. So therefore, there's an option. It's free will. Remember, you can choose to obey God or choose not to. It's your will for all my Christian brothers and sisters in Lancaster County. Sorry about the sacrilege, but so free will. You get to choose. You can go or not go. So that would be my tact if I was a Republican commissioner who has no business kind of injecting my political views into specific public events. In my opinion, you could remain neutral and you could certainly position yourself to say, you know what, I'm going to support whatever. And this way, you know what you look like? You look like a public servant. You look like a neutral public servant that just only worries about the fact that you're serving the public and making sure budgets are happening. Whatever the dumbass shit commissioners do. Sorry about the dumbass shit, but I don't know what a commissioner does, to be honest. I don't know. I mean, what do they do? They're in charge of the county. Okay, I guess whatever. Jokes aside, I'm definitely showing my ignorance for local politics, and people always hammer me like, why don't you focus on local politics more? I don't fucking care. That's not true. I care. Boy, I'm gonna have to cut this in edit, aren't I? I care. I just find that some of the issues that are kind of affecting America are larger than local, although I'm probably wrong on 99% of that. And then this is a perfect example. This is a political system. This is a political issue that's local. But I argue it shouldn't have been. It shouldn't have been political at all. And so the first mistake that the commissioners made was making it political and injecting themselves. Like, who cares? Okay, what do you think? Don't think. Don't say anything. Just stay back. You're not an activist. You're a public official. This isn't you want to be an activist? Go be an activist. Don't be an activist as you're a public official, because you're going to divide. There are people that don't align with your beliefs in like at their core. So when you say something that at the core violates my beliefs, I mean, I believe everyone should be able to do what the fuck they want as long as they're not hurting anybody. And that's pretty wide open. And I kind of go with the golden rule on that. Do unto others as you want. So in my opinion, if someone's running an event that I'm not going to go to or I don't like, I'm just going to, and I'm in a position where I'm all eyeballs and ears are on me, then in that point, I think it's my responsibility to remain neutral and supportive of kind of of my job. And that's just to make sure that the public services and anything having to do with my role that might intersect with the event are, that I'm performing those duties. And one of those duties is not to say yes or no to an event. It's just not. Okay. And I don't care. There's no way to slice it. If you get elected as a public official, for instance, if you get elected as a district, justice, and now you have the ability to marry people, you don't get to choose, hey, I don't want to marry these people, I'm going to marry these people. You just fucking do it. Like that woman, that crazy woman was like, oh, I'm just going to not sign the marriage license and totally fucking find a loophole. No, you may not agree with it. Go find another job. Just like nurses, and like these nurses or doctors that suggest, well, I'm not going to do this procedure because I don't believe in this. Do the fucking procedure. You're the fucking doctor, whatever it is. So when people start to say, when they're in positions where they have this power and they start to inject their own political beliefs, it scares the shit out of me. What about my surgeons that don't like black people? I mean, I'm serious. I know that's crazy, but I do have a real fear. Like, what if I have some racist surgeon? I'm under the knife. He's like, fuck this, extra cut. Way leap. But I think that's where you have to start to look at people and say, look, you are supposed to be neutral here. You're not supposed to have an opinion. You're supposed to just cut the person open. You're not looking to see what color they are. You're just doing it, right? You're just doing whatever. So that is where I stand on that. Now, the request for the apology, I don't know how they're going to apologize. They are not responsible for the bomb threat. Is their rhetoric? I don't even know if their rhetoric was responsible, because Where they went wrong was injecting their opinion, and just because they said they disagree with it doesn't mean somebody should take that and create a terrorist event. So I don't think their rhetoric caused the bomb threat. I think that they got put in the news because they fucking put themselves there, and now they're gonna be a target for anybody. Why did you put yourself in there? By the way, I worked with Ray. He's a bright guy, but a robot. Okay, these are, and Parsons probably has the most repulsive conservative views out of both of them. And I know people who used to work with him when he worked at the law firm. So these are local people that I know. Okay, so I don't have a lot of respect for their personal beliefs. I have respect for Ray's. I mean, he's been doing it for long. I know he knows what he's doing, which is why it was bothersome to see him inject himself. It's like, dude, stay quiet. You're a great public servant. I know how hard right you are, but shut the fuck up. And Mr. Parsons, from what I hear about your views, people that worked with you were repulsed by your views. And so maybe you should just take the extra step to maybe keep them kind of hidden behind you. So the problem is we have two people that couldn't, and like I said, I'm more disappointed with Ray. Josh seems like the type of person that's just a fucking dumbass asshole that just hates everything. And I'm sorry, I'm saying that because I do understand from my perspective and the things people told me, his views are repulsive and they're not American in many ways because they're not inclusive. But I don't say the same thing about Ray, and I just was surprised to see him speak up about it because it's like, just shut up. You're kind of silent guy that's kind of doing things and making things happen. Why put yourself in the crosshairs? But now you have. And so I'm going to kind of split hairs here and say, look, the both commissioners, by putting themselves into that position, were idiots. And I know they're going to continue to be idiots too, because they're going to use this as a platform to, especially Mr. Parsons, watch out for him. He's going to use this. I mean, this is the kind of anger trope that he'll run on. So I don't see the same kind of vein in Ray, but I just from my knowledge of Mr. Parsons, I don't see much difference between him and those people that are in the basements that are angry and alt-right and just saying all the brown people shit. I mean, I'm saying that this is coming from, well, he might argue it's hearsay, but these are people that worked with him. So I don't have respect for them, but I still am going to kind of line with them on, you know what? The apology is too far, in my opinion, because they are not responsible for the bomb threat. I don't think they have anything to do with it. Is their rhetoric? I don't even think their rhetoric said, hey, go do horrible things. I tried to look. They may have said that they disapprove of it. It's not appropriate for children, but none of that is going to induce somebody to create a crime. So I just don't see it. And I know a lot of folks are going to disagree, and I'm sure LGBTQ community is going to probably hate on me for this, but as a huge advocate for the LGBTQ community, I'm going to have to take that one with a grain of salt because I'm trying to be fair here. But I will say, when I say that I'm an advocate, I have brothers, I have friends, sponsee people. I know a lot of folks that are across the spectrum, and I have a reputation as being very supportive. So just because I say that they're wrong in this instance does not negate my support. Okay, let's not fucking cancel me because of that. I mean, I guess canceling is good at my level because it means that maybe I get some recognition for saying something. But the truth be told, I'm not trying to create enemies there either. But I just want to be fair and say, I believe that public officials do have a responsibility to keep themselves out of those political issues and facilitate and do the public servant thing and remain kind of neutral. You say that, and a lot of people get frustrated with that, but if you go start working for the state or the federal government, a lot of public officials have that position. They don't take stands. They don't go out. They don't even campaign. They don't do anything. Because they've chosen this road, they realize they have to be kind of this neutral party because of the fact that people will kind of cling to what they say, and that can either be good or bad. And quite frankly, it also allows for bribery, favoritism, all the other stuff that happens when people start to kind of align with somebody outside of their duties. So again, I don't know what I'm gonna have to edit out of this, and I'm not sure how much hate I'm gonna get for saying this, but I don't think the apology is necessary. I do think that if anything, they should say we should not inject our our personal beliefs uh, shouldn't be put into the public sphere, and we need to make sure that we're being neutral for any kind of public event that happens, regardless of how we feel about it. And that's where we made the mistake. I don't hold them accountable for the bomb threat. I don't. Now, who do I hold accountable? I mean, I think there's a lot of folks that are accountable here, but it's one person or whatever entity did this. I don't think anybody that commits something like that is making a political statement, and by doing that, they then become a terrorist. So I don't think anyone associated with those two folks or them were looking to have a terrorist event happen. So that's why I'm saying, now you could say, well, they said it and things happen. I'm still saying that even looking at the rhetoric, I didn't see it as being inciting, a bomb threat or making somebody want to hurt people or scare people. And typically a bomb threat's just going to be a threat, but it does what it's supposed to do, and that clears the area. Was it somebody in the Republican Party? Maybe. Was it somebody in the Democratic Party? Maybe. I mean, those are going around. I mean, who knows who it was? I guess I don't know if they've found out yet. I know there's some email trails or whatever. It's surprising that they can't find out. That does look a little suspicious that they can't find out who it was with all the technology we have today. I mean, that's some stealthy shit, right? Being able to do this without getting caught in this day and age with all the digital footprints and stamps, timestamps, and all the easily left breadcrumbs that happen from anything that you do digitally. Surprising. Now, I'm not going to dive into the conspiracy theory yet, but I did on, I think, Bubble Online. The first day I'm like, well, how are they not finding out who it is like really quickly? And it just bothers me as a tech person. I'm like, come on. I mean, there's so many ways to figure out where it was. We don't have fucking payphones. It's not like somebody went to a payphone and called it in. They did it from an email account. Maybe they went to the library, but even no matter what they did, there's a way to track them, unless there's some Uber, there's very few people that can do things online without being tracked. Very few people that and I mean anywhere, because at this point you have to kind of start from zero and go really, really hardcore to get no tracking on whatever you just did. So that's kind of an interesting kind of probably future discussion I could have. That's like, what's the status of this thing and why is it taking so long? Sure. Is that their fault? Do they owe an apology for that? Not necessarily. So I know this isn't the cleanest, bestest argument that you ever heard, and probably lost folks on both sides with it. But that's where I'm coming from on this. And that is that there is a responsibility from our public officials to stay out of things. And I brought up the German thing in the beginning because I felt like I was trying to figure out what kind of framework exists or what they did to kind of avoid any kind of hate speech. And especially with how easy it was to make a reference back to Nazism. I mean, it was fresh. And so, they kind of had to clean things up. How did they keep things clean for so many years? And what the effects of that were. And you kind of get into this, idea that when you associate evil like symbols, or you use content in any way towards your ideology, that's where it gets bad. And that's why I said these officials fucked up by injecting their political beliefs, and they should have stayed neutral. And I know I said some kind of things about Ray and Josh that I don't like to attack people. I've said that on here, but the views that I know they have now, especially now that they've kind of aired their views, it makes me think that they're not suited for the job. Number one, they made major mistake by injecting themselves into the political part of this story. And to me, that shows some naivete, and as well as kind of maybe a little bit of personal ambition to kind of put themselves into the sphere. So I question the motives of that. And for those two things, I think that's a disqualifier. Like, you got ego. Look, I know you have a long record, not you, Josh, but Ray, I know you have a long record working public officials. I mean, I was so surprised. I remember sitting on committees with him, running him. It was great. You couldn't tell if he was Republican or Democrat, which is fantastic. He could have stayed that way. I don't know about Josh before. I never worked with Josh. Like I said, I just know people that know him, and they didn't have very pleasant things to say about the man. So sorry, Josh, but that's true. I don't think your peers liked you too much at the law firm. Anyway, so the apology, nah, Josh, Ray, no apology needed in my opinion. But I think you should step down. I think you should get out. I think you should go maybe run for office or do something political. But when you're doing, and again, I know you have to run for office there, but I mean, maybe run for more political office, not a local office that's used to facilitate and handle budgets in the county. I don't think that's a political position where you're supposed to espouse your views. It's just not how I see it. You know, you're saying political and it's not political. I'm saying that there's the need to address public services and do the things that the public administration side of things without injecting your opinion. Okay. And so for that reason, I say no apology, but you both should get out, go do something else, or keep your mouth shut and realize that you are in a position where people are going to look to you for persuasion or influence. You are not responsible for the bomb threat, but you are responsible to be a neutral party. Why would you want to inject your views on something that you don't understand and you have no business kind of being a part of? You have the choice not to do anything with it. So you don't have to go. You can encourage people not to go on the side, maybe not publicly. I wouldn't do it publicly, but you can say, hey, look, this isn't something that I want my children to go to, whatever. Fine, go do it. Do that thing. But where you went wrong was by even saying how you felt about it. But I'm going to say to the folks requesting the apology, I don't know. I see it and I understand. And by the way, this is a marginalized demographic. So there may be some folks that are thinking I'm being insensitive to their plight. I do understand that. I'm just trying to be kind of hardline, fair, Solomon style, cut the baby in half, take this, take that, who's the real mother kind of shit. Not really wanting to cut the baby, just hoping to get some information here kind of thing. And I'm saying this because I think it's clear to me that, yeah, somebody's wrong here, but an apology for the bomb threat, not necessary because it's not them. But let's find the motherfuckers that did it, and then we can hold court. Okay, that's how I feel about it. This one was brought to me by the reader, and I figured I'd tackle it as my first podcast. I don't know how it's going to go. I'm going to edit out the uhs, the ahs, the shits, maybe the fucking stumbles, my wiping of my brow that might go over poorly on the mic. I'm hoping I got sound today, by the way, because that happened yesterday. But I'm going to wrap with that just because I think that this is going to, I'm going to let this one simmer. I'm going to come back and edit this thing and probably be like, what the fuck was I saying? But I feel like it's a good intro. It's a national story. There's now a follow-up story that's happening for it. I'm not trying to ride the wave of this. I just think it's appropriate to be fair and say that oftentimes in this podcast, I'm not necessarily going to align with the group think on it. Even the folks that align with my viewpoint, I don't give a fuck. That's kind of I guess that's the feature that you're going to get if you continue listening to this. It's I don't really give a fuck that I'm a Democrat when the Democrats are doing dumb shit. I don't give a fuck about Republicans that are doing dumb shit. I mean, I don't care. Like, if Democrats are doing dumb shit and I'm a Democrat, I'm going to say something. Just like I'm going to say something when Republicans are doing dumb shit. So that was kind of the core of smashing the party, was that we're going to smash the parties. Fuck the tribalism. Let's look for real policies. If it's a Republican idea and it works, let's go for it. Let's go for it. If it's a Democratic idea and it works, let's go for it. Stop acting like, oh, well, that sounds like a good idea, but who introduced the legislation? Please tell me who introduced it, because it's very important to me. No, it's not. The idea comes out, boom, it works. Let's get it done. The data shows it's good. Fine. I would like to see more data-driven policy kind of decisions happen, truth be told. That obviously comes from my background. So you're going to hear more of that on this podcast. I'm going to probably get deeper and deeper down that rabbit hole of policy as we get further and further down the road, because I think that's where the rubber hits the road, is the policy. Like, what actually gets enacted? All the fluff and the, this is a wedge issue that gets people off their ass. People are like, oh, protect the children and sexualization. Motherfucker, go watch Flip Wilson. If you fucking have a problem with men wearing dresses, calm the fuck down. This is the oldest thing in the world. It's art. Calm the fuck down. The only sexualization of it is you. I mean, that's it. That's it. Your weird ass like kink is coming out. So if person's dressed up like a woman, they're reading stories to kids, get over it. Who cares? Who cares that they're wearing a bikini? Like, it's your brain needs to get, your kid's not thinking like that. Your kid's not your child is not thinking like you're thinking. And again, maybe some self-reflection needs to happen for those folks that are really kind of hardcore against something like this. Like, what's your hang up? Who hurt you? Maybe is the next question. Get some therapy. Why are you trying to control other people's lives? I know, because maybe you don't have control of your own. I don't know. I'm not a psychologist. Really, the only thing I'm good at is software engineering and bullshitting and talking. So, when I start to go off on these other subjects, you can obviously take it with a grain of salt. As I said before, vet everything, including me. But I think this was a good topic to kind of lead with, and I'll try to do a better job kind of getting to the core of things. And I'm going to try to talk about things that are the wedge issues. I just feel like those issues that are used to get people off the sofa and get them off their chair and vote, I want to break those down to help people understand why they're being played. And so you're going to hear a lot of that. You're also going to hear a lot about my racial experience in America. You can tell I sound like a white guy. My parents I was adopted by white people. So here I am, living in a very conservative area, went to mostly white schools. This is how I ended up. But I have a unique experience in that while I may enjoy some of the privilege that comes with coming from a white family, when I go outside of the area, or I go into an area where maybe they don't know that I came from this family, I deal with it. And so I kind of have a unique experience where I had some privilege, but I also ran smack into the bullshit of, holy shit, I'm black. I'm reminded every day. So that's what you're going to get if you continue to listen. And I hope that you do. Make sure you check out the YouTube. Make sure you follow me on all the platforms, Smashing the Party. I call this show Nightcap. There's also a follow-up show that's coming together. It's called After Hours. That is going to be apolitical. It's going to be fun. It's going to be probably bitter me, but bitter about dumb shit, or excited about cool shit. But it is not going to be the place where I unleash hell on your ears about how I feel about the political systems of the United States. So if you're not really liking this, but you're loving the low baritone that every now and then I slip into, which I promise I'll do more of when I'm on After Hours, or you like the witty, kind of charming, pissed off angle, but you're really tired of politics, or you don't do politics because for some reason you're somehow living in America and politics don't affect you, After Hours is going to be your thing. And I think it'll be fun. It's not just going to be me yelling and screaming. As some people have said, this is a stream of consciousness. It's going to be much more kind of standard, but it's going to have my flair to it. So I'm hoping to bring that here in the next couple days. We're going to start that show. So stay tuned. Last thing I'll say, I do this every time, is I appreciate the support. Every single day, I look at my little chart and the numbers are going up, and it's because you guys are continuing to support me. So I'm going to ask that you share, like, subscribe. When this podcast rolls out, make sure you tell people. I think podcasts do real well word of mouth. So I don't know about rolling out my old content. Some of it's pretty fired up, but you can count from this day forward, every single live that I do that happens from Monday through Thursday, 10:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on TikTok, X, Facebook, YouTube, and whatever the fuck else is. Twitch. I'm on Twitch. I don't know why someone would stop watching video games and listen to me, but I got one listener on Twitch. Holla, whoever you are. So you can find me on those other platforms and you can go back and kind of see my style. It's something I'm growing. I'm a little rough around the edges. You're not going to get Stephen Colbert or Jon Stewart or even fucking Rush Limbaugh out of this. You're going to get Nate Bomberger, but I will tell you that I am interested in growing this. I'm interested in improving, and I love it. It's exciting. It's probably the most excitement I've had in my life. This is one of my dreams, actually, to kind of be an orator of some sort. If I can roll out my words right. So thanks. Appreciate it. We're going to keep going. I'll be back next week. It's Thursday, so I take the weekend off. I have a 3-day weekend where I rest in my thoughts and think about the next play and also do my full-time job, which is catch up on the stuff that I'm trying to do to make money. So hopefully you enjoyed it. Make sure you tune in next time. Again, from here on out, we're going to be on all the platforms as well as on all of your podcast platforms. So hello world, here we come, smashing the party. This was the first podcast version of Nightcap. Stay tuned for more content from Smashing the Party. Appreciate it. I don't know how I'm going to edit this. I'll do a pre-roll, post-roll, wrap it up and ship it. I think that's it, folks. We'll wrap on that. You know what? Before I end, I'm going to end the recording, but I'll go ahead and do the comments real quick, just in case there's comments. I'm really bad with the comments. Let me see if there's any comments. No comments. All right, cool. It is helpful. These platforms are kind of altering their algorithms because of the political nature of everything and the fact that we're near an election in the United States. So I'm going to ask that you engage with my page with a like or a comment. I mean, it's helpful. The Facebook has actually a knob that you can turn off to turn off political content. I am labeled as political content. I tried to label myself as comedy, but they undermined me and said I'm not funny, which is true. It's been verified I'm not funny by multiple parties. But you got to engage, you got to like, you got to share. And in my opinion, that's part of the censorship that can happen on these digital platforms is they're hoping that you won't engage with this type of content because they know that we can change the world if enough people get involved. Look, I have high hopes for this. If you're listening to it thinking I have delusions of grandeur, you're probably right. But I think that with persistence and your help, we can actually grow this to where we have a platform we can make change. So stick with me. Hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you guys Monday at 10:30 like we always do. 10:30 Eastern Standard Time on all the platforms. And hopefully I'll get my tongue untied next week. Enjoy your week.